Mr. Richard Rekhi. My first question is regarding efficiency of the thermal power plants. So how can it be improved? Because monitoring in the power coal quality is very poor. Even monitoring in boiler situation is not adequate as per the world standard. And actually health of the power plant is not, the operators are not aware about the health of the power plant. And with the existing power plant, how the situation, yes, improvement of the efficiency have been told is possible with supercritical and ultra supercritical power plants. But for the existing power plants, how the efficiency of the power production can be improved, particularly with respect to the inferior quality of coal that is coming into the Indian market day by day. That is the questions. And second question is somewhat related, that is to Rekhi Parekh. I think Richard Rekhi. That is about 25% reduction of carbon dioxide emission by 2020 in power plant. I think he meant to say that 25% reduction in emission factor of the power plant per kilowatt generation. How is it possible? Because we have to keep our existing power plants by 2020. We are not be able to produce coal-based power plant by supercritical and ultra supercritical only. So how 25%? That means if it is 1 kg per kilowatt hour today, will it be possible 0.75 kg per kilowatt hour in tomorrow by 2020? Is it really feasible?
Thank you for asking this question, because I was expecting somebody would ask. On the efficiency, let's first understand, when was the last audit done on the energy consumption of all the power plants? Second, efficiency after doing an audit on the auxiliary consumption of our power plant and the heat rate are two important things. Heat rates get suffered, rightly so, if the quality of coal is there. Therefore, there has to be a monitoring agency from the center or the state, whichever, there should be a monitoring agency to ensure the right type of coal is supplied, so that you ensure the station heat rate is correct, you improve the efficiency in the auxiliary consumption and the heat rate. These are extremely important. And thirdly, the new plants which are coming up are with a higher efficiency. So therefore, who should get the coal allotment? You have a limited resources, utilize the resources, the limited resources on the efficient plants which are there, like a merit order dispatch for generation. In the same way, there should be a merit order dispatch for efficiency of the operations of the plants.
I think I didn't say about the power plant 20-25%. I said the carbon footprint that's the intention of the government, to reduce it down by 20 to 25%, and this would be all carbon emission that would go. And of course it's ambitious, but there is an effort made, and you can, like I said, even the ministry is now being changed. They call it environment, forest and carbon, climate change. So I think it is important that the government is giving it importance, and we are seeing that if these things don't happen, it could have other effect on the environment. So it is not about the power plant, 20 to 25%.
I think the reference was to India's voluntary goal and the voluntary goal which was actually given at the time of Copenhagen, but not in the conference, it was communicated later, is a 20 to 25% reduction in GHG intensity of the economy between 2005 and 2020, excluding the agriculture sector. So it is not an absolute reduction of the India's GHG emissions. It is only a reduction of the GHGs emitted per dollar of GDP in purchasing power parity terms, excluding the agriculture sector. And it certainly does not relate to particular sectors or particular technologies like power plants.
Thank you all very much, and thanks to some for bearing with me, please. May I request Mr. Arun Mukherjee, Chairperson of the Energy Environment Subcommittee of the Bengal Chamber, to have the last say in this session.
Ladies, gentlemen, distinguished speakers and friends. First, I would like to start with Dr. Arup Rai Choudhury's comment. This Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry is not the chambers in West Bengal. It is the oldest chamber in the country, just to start with. Thank you. No, we know. As we conclude the first half of the day one, it gives me great pleasure to propose a formal vote of thanks to our esteemed speakers on the dais, our sponsors, patrons, and to you all, our stakeholders for the event, who have supported and helped fortify our commitment towards sustainable livelihoods. Our heartfelt gratitude to all our speakers, all pioneers in their domain. Sri Monish Gupta for honoring and encouraging us with his august presence, for making it so special for us by inaugurating this conclave. We are privileged. Our deep appreciation to ITC Sonar, the first CDM certified hotel, for the role they have always played in making this event successful year after year. My heartfelt thanks to them. Our valued sponsors who have been with us in this journey, lending their unstinted support, and without whom we would never have been able to present this conclave, are Diamond sponsor and presenting partner Philips India Limited, Gold sponsor Exide Industries Limited, Ghosh Bose and Associates Private Limited, ITC Limited, Tata Steel Limited. Presenting sponsor Sustainable Power, Energy Efficiency Services Limited, Clean Energy Partner CSC Limited. Silver sponsor Emta Coal Limited, India Power Corporation Limited, Techno Electric and Engineering Company Limited, and West Bengal State Electricity Distribution Company Limited. Knowledge partner ERM, travel partner Air India, and of course the conclave promoter and platinum sponsor Coal India Limited. We would like to express our sincere thanks and to our well-wishers and delegates, members of the media and our speakers. Therefore, as we conclude the inaugural session, I would like to thank you all for partnering us in this iconic conclave, which is now a movement in the sphere of sustainable development in the country. Before we break for lunch, we have a very pleasant task to perform. May I request Mr. Kallal Datto, President of the Chamber, to present the memento to Sri Manish Gupta. This year the memento are the painting which are done under sit and draw competition by the school children, and the sapling, live sapling which we are, yeah. Dr. Arup Rai Choudhury. Mr. Partho Bhattacharjee. Sri Alok Mukherjee. May I now request Mr. P. Roy to present the memento to Dr. Pradipta Ghosh. Mr. Siddhartha Mehta. Mr. Richard Reiki. And Mr. Krishna Kumar. We shall break for lunch now, and we would like to assemble after 35 to 40 minutes, sir. Our next session, we are going to have Mrs. Medha Patkar, and she will be deliberating on the sustainable environment. Thank you.
The first master class on sustainability, the Indian story of environment, development, people and resources, by none other than Srimati Medha Patkar. This class will be moderated by Mr. Debe Mukherjee, Key Resource Person of the Energy and Environment Committee of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So may I request Srimati Medha Patkar and Mr. Debe Mukherjee to please come to the dais.
Welcome back after lunch. I think this afternoon session is possibly would be the high point of this conclave. It's indeed a pleasure and a privilege and an honor, I would say, to have Srimati Medha Patkar amongst us this afternoon, and she would be taking a master class. It's quite an interesting concept. I don't know the way she would like to play it, but we will leave it entirely to her how she would like to play this session, which should last for about 40 to 45 minutes. In fitness of things, we need to introduce the speaker. Now, how would I introduce Medhaji? I do not know. But I think a very important observation needs to be made, and I think that's a great contribution that the Bengal Chamber has brought in, an element Bengal Chamber has brought into the scheme of things and into the conclave. Because what we know, and in fact I have to admit this is the first time I'm meeting Medhaji in person. She's an iconic personality. She represents a lot of things. There's a huge involvement and commitment to certain great causes, issues, challenges in the country and internationally. But one pivotal point or anchor point which binds everything together is what I notice, it's the people's movement. Am I correct, Medhaji? And that is what she reflects and what she is all about. Now, when we talk about environment, resource management, people, that's the anchor point. They are the ones who get affected, who respond, who interact with environment, with resources. Whatever we talk about, it has to be people-centric and has to interface with people. So who else but Srimati Medha Patkar to give us a wonderful session this afternoon, and maybe she will ask us questions, or, and I'm sure she will allow all of us to ask questions, but we will keep it all contained within the next 45 minutes. Over to Srimati Medha Patkar to take on the class, and thank you very much, Madam, for having given us this opportunity to interact with you. Please.
You won't need this.
It don't even work. Respected office bearers of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce, the staff, colleagues, the organizers, and the eminent personalities from various industries, consultant organizations, sparing non-governmental organizations, and my own colleagues from the National Alliance of People's Movements, and Mr. Sujay Bose, the former professor of energy, Jadavpur University, because of whom I am here. I am indeed pleased and privileged, sir, to be with you all and have this dialogue, which I presume to be not like the other dialogues, which are many times with the converted and the convinced. So it's a privilege, and I hope this dialogue would go further, deep into and reflecting upon your decisions and actions. And since there are also the representatives of the various state ministries and authorities, the state, the big S, from the center and the state, I hope that the public sector also would really take the cause into consideration. It's also good to know that the industrial, the corporate sector is concerned about the issues related to the natural resources on one hand and the people on the other. Because development has become a tantra and mantra in a way. And in the politics, you can say that it is politicization of every issue that brings in some results somewhere. But the way development is really used and manipulated and promoted through the electoral politics today, that I suppose is mind-boggling for everyone. And why I say this is that it's okay when Uma Bharti ji says that Sadak Bijli Pani Hamara agenda hai. But when, without going into any details of the various conceptions that really are a part of the wider umbrella concept of development, without spelling out what are the goals, and not just the goals but the values, and whether those match with the value framework underlined by the great Constitution of India, whether the developmental priorities are indeed matching with the priorities of the 121 crores people, and especially those who are generally considered as the focus of attention and action both, the needy, the so-called disadvantaged classes and sections who really wait and wait and wait for even the basic needs to be fulfilled. 96% of the working class in this country, I'm sure you know that They are called as unorganized, but they are more organized. What they are not is protected class. And hence this unprotected class and the members of that class belonging to or composing 96% of the India's population, for example, also want and need development. And hence who can really oppose development? I cannot. Everyone wants development, that is desirable change, that is to be always in a certain framework of our own vision, whether it is a vision India, vision West Bengal, vision world or whatever. And it is in that context that we are speaking today. So it's very likely that your vision and my vision will differ. But that's where the dialogue and the discussion and also the debate really matters. Having said this, it's certainly that the title of the subject given to me is also interesting. It needs consideration. Development with people and resources. What is happening, unfortunately, is that development is considered to be an exclusive term, as if it is some lamp to be hung somewhere, without having anything to do with the ground realities. When there are people, there are habitations, there are sections of populations, I just described some of those, and they are the capital. They are the capital for any and every activity, whether it is industrial or agricultural, whether it is construction or destruction. And they are the ones for whom, with whom we are to run this whole paraphernalia of democracy on one hand and all activities including the social, economic and political. So when the development is conceived and considered to be something which is not to be considering people as the first given parameter, that's where we feel we go wrong. We as a country, when we say we, the people of India, in whose name the constitution is written, we say democracy is demos, and that cusy of them and not one prime minister or few chief ministers or bureaucrats as well. When we say that people really are in front of our eyes, and then we also spell out further those needy populations, the Dalits, the Adivasis, the farmers, the laborers, the fish workers, generally the priorities begin with this. Read any manifesto of any political party, I'm sure you will find that. And yet what happens is what Noam Chomsky has unhesitatingly concluded, and that name really matters. Profit over people. And that's where again we go wrong, as my side of the partners and actors see it. And this is what is of concern. Because people, the habitations are there, and especially in the case of countries like India, unlike in the countries or the continents like Australia, we find that the resource matrix is such that you cannot so easily find a chunk or a piece of land which is of no use to some population or other living therein. We were just talking about the fish workers dwelling outside but on the fringes of the Sundarbans forest. Now they are not considered as forest dwellers, while the definition in the Forest Rights Act and the interpretation and so on, we just spoke to the media about that. But they are fully dependent on the forest as much as on fish, but that is not considered. So every people, popular habitation or section, popular in the general sense, and the resource matrix is really not just the capital in the sense of commodities or the currencies, but they are the main resource base of any country and humanity for that matter. If this is given, then do we start with that when we plan our development? That's a matter of concern. If we start with people and people and people, with the unprecedented or unmatchable diversity, we will certainly first sit with people and plan our development. And there is ample scope within the framework of Constitution to do this. For a politician, a bureaucrat, as well as an industrialist. If you want really to develop a piece of land, it cannot be just the development of land. You want the development of the people in or on or around land. Go to people, sit with them, see what are their needs, what are their priorities. Otherwise, the picture that emerges is so very awful and so very unjust and unfair that the people in the Mose River Valley near the Pune city always wanted a primary school to come up. They wanted their beautiful micro to macro watersheds to be developed. They wanted the roads to come in, but not only to take them out. They wanted their own rivulets, streams to rivulets to the river Mose, a part of the fragile Western Ghat, to be developed and harnessed, no doubt. And they also wanted their waters to be shared. But one of the great politicians, while going through the helicopter, just spotted that land near Pune, and the Maharashtrians at least would recognize it became a dream of Lavasa city. The Adivasis who were staying there, many of them are still, unless they became the temporary workers of the corporation, they are still in the similar huts as they were staying earlier. The children, most of them, and I'm saying it with all responsibility against all propaganda, still going to the government school, somewhere climbing down the hills. They do go sometime to the Apollo hospital, but if they cannot pay at least 200 rupees, they come back, although that is a part of the city that is only partly developed, more or less stayed because they violated all laws and norms, including grabbing the land of the Adivasis by the non-Adivasis, that include the state itself, which is declared by the Supreme Court as the non-Adivasi, and also the corporation itself. So friends, when this kind of things happen, and then the distortions to the contrasts really are found to be glaring, what is missing is dealing with the people as living resources, and then dealing with them also as decision makers. And that is what I would appeal to your conscience and your consideration. You should all and we should all begin with. If it is a real estate development, and I'm sure nowadays, because a large section of the corporates form the real estate developers, dealing with the piece of urban land, either expanding in the urban city or township or building a huge infrastructure,